What if I told you that there was something all of us are missing in our daily lives that would completely transform how we feel about ourselves and about our choices, and would help to transform all of us from feeling isolated and alone in our experiences to feeling held and connected to a larger human story? Sounds too good to be true, right? How could that kind of thing be real? But it is real. So today I'm going to be talking about this thing that we are missing, not only in our society and culture at large oftentimes, but also usually inside our internal relationship with ourselves. And that thing is validation. Validation is like when somebody says to you, wow, it makes so much sense that you feel like that. I totally understand why you feel that way. At first, it might almost sound too simple to be this completely life-changing, game-changing thing in our lives, but let me ask you a question. How often, when you share something you've just been through, something you're frustrated by, something you're struggling with, how often do people say to you, it makes total sense that you feel like that? The reality is that validation is not something that is integrated well into our society and culture. The people I know and encounter in my daily life are often saying, well, I have this problem because I make bad choices. I just don't make good choices. I'm not disciplined like that. I'm lazy. That's why I'm struggling with this thing. None of these things are true. Okay, none of these things are why we struggle. These are the narratives that we've been taught about why we are having trouble with things like losing weight or changing our eating habits or with addictions that we have or with our mental health, right? The ways that we are taught to relate to ourselves about it are often very much about invalidating our experiences and about self-blame. But the real problem is actually a gap in skill, in the tools that we have available to us, in the resources that we have available to us, okay? So we need that to be recognized. When we're struggling with something like an addiction or an internal experience is very painful, we need to have our experience validated. It is one of the most important things for us to be able to actually move through that experience. We deserve to have our experience validated, okay? This is part of the self-love piece that I talk about a lot, which is that we're often operating in an ecosystem internally because of what we've absorbed and the wounds that we have, where we're very self-negative, self-berating, self-hating, and all this negative energy that actually keeps us stuck. Bringing real softness, real understanding is the thing that will help us to transform out of these patterns. And validation is a critical piece of this. It is an enormous game changer. I remember my sister Lauren, who I talk about on here all the time because she's an important, really important influence in my life, pointed out to me that AI, when you talk with a chatbot, actually, one of the things they are so good at is validating our experience. If you are talking to a chatbot about something you're struggling with, I can almost guarantee you that one of the first things it's going to say is, it makes total sense that you're experiencing that and that you're feeling that way. And one of the reasons that it's such a big deal is because there is such a gap in our society. One of the reasons so many of us would rather take our problems to an AI than to a person is because the AI knows how to do this fundamental thing. And it is changing how all of us relate to ourselves. That's what my sister Lauren and I have been noticing, is that because this piece is so grossly missing in society, most of us are turning to a chatbot right now, because validation is so critical for the healthy emotional ecosystem for a human being. The real truth about why most of us are making choices that we hate, that are causing us pain, or why most of us are struggling or suffering or having an internal experience that is dark, that is full of pain, the real reason that these things are happening is because of wounds that we have. We are making our choices, we are having our internal experiences formed by early life experiences, early life wounds, and unprocessed emotion. So often, if you've watched my videos before, you've heard me talk about the fact that a lot of us have a lot of unprocessed experiences, emotional experiences that have been pushed down into our bodies by shame, by disgust or disdain, right? Things that we internalized from our early lives, from the people around us, the adults around us, maybe our caregivers, our teachers, maybe our peers, right? People that taught us that our vulnerability, our pain, our needs for self-expression were not okay. Most humans have had this experience. And so a lot of us have, by necessity, pushed those things down inside of us. And so by the time we become adults, we have an enormous amount of unprocessed experiences down in here in our bodies. And I'm physically pointing here because this part of our bodies, our core, the core of our bodies is often the place that holds a lot of it. And I don't mean it's only these chakras like the heart, solar plexus, and sacral chakra, but usually it's down in here. That's often the places where we store a lot of this emotional content that hasn't been processed. I'm someone who's experienced a lot of this in my life too. I've suffered from depression and chronic anxiety and a lot of severe nervous system dysregulation and nervous system disorders that have formed in my life as a result of those patterns. And so I very, very deeply relate to having a lot of painful internal experiences created by that stuff. And this kind of stuff is the foundation. This is the thing that is forming these patterns that keep us stuck. In my view, these things are the root cause of addiction. And they are stuck because we don't have the tools for transforming out of them. Things like learning how to be a safe space for emotion, say, which takes time to learn. We have to be able to learn how it works, and then we have to be able to practice it and take baby steps towards being able to hold space for really big emotion. So the picture I'm painting for you is that because most of us also don't have this piece, this validation piece, we're being told everything is our fault, and we're not being told the truth, which is that the things we do make sense. The choices we make sense. When we are in an addiction, that addiction is a valid and expected response to the actual circumstances we are living in, the actual pain we have, the actual unprocessed emotion we have, and the lack of tools and resources that we often have in our society. We're not given these internal tools, these internal skills. We're not taught these things. We're not given the resources also within our community, the support systems that we need for this kind of stuff. It's lacking. And so most of us are stuck in these things. We're stuck in these patterns. So why is validation so important? Why do we actually need it? The reason that validation is so powerful is because once we receive it and we really get this message that it makes sense for me to be feeling the way I'm feeling, it fundamentally creates a shift in the way we relate to the pain that's inside of us in that moment. And it's like the first baby step into being with that pain. Oftentimes, when we're having a painful or uncomfortable experience, our first reaction is to be in some kind of resistance to it, right? That's a natural human response, is to be in some kind of resistance to it. We almost try to push it away. And so this is one of the things that's so frustrating about the constant messaging that we're getting that invalidates our experience and tells us that it's our fault and we have to make some change. The frustrating thing about that is that all of that story actually keeps us out of the painful experience that's coming up. It makes us do this sort of scurrying, hustling to try to fix everything, right? We go into fixing mode, and ultimately none of those things are really going to address what the internal thing is that's going on, that is the driver of the pattern. Validation gives us that layer of, hey, it makes sense I feel like this, and it's okay for me to feel like this. The sense that it is a natural and understandable way to feel gives our psyches, our bodies permission to just feel that way. That's what it really is. So the reason validation is such a big deal is because it initiates this kind of welcoming of our inner pain. It initiates this process of us being with and witnessing the inner struggle, the pain and discomfort that we're having. And that is what begins and initiates this transformational process. So this is why validation is such a big deal. You know what is so beautiful about it? It is so simple. Can you imagine what our whole social ecosystem would look like if everywhere we went, we were getting these messages of, it makes total sense that we're struggling with this stuff. It makes total sense, and it's so understandable that we are struggling with these internal painful emotional states like depression. It makes so much sense that we are struggling with addictive eating patterns or addictive relationships in our lives or addiction to different substances, caffeine. There's so many things in our life that kind of have its hooks in us, these habits we form, and their ways of coping. And it makes sense that we are coping. We are all coping with so much. We all have unprocessed emotional experiences. We're all coping with the realities of living in the modern world with everything that's going on right now. Of course, we are having these experiences and feeling this way and struggling with these things. It's totally understandable. And the message that it's our fault is, in my view, a very toxic thing, not only because it piles on this extra layer of shame and disgust and frustration, right? But it also keeps us out of being in our experiences so they can just process through us. Instead, it keeps us in this, I have to fix it, I have to fix it, I have to fix myself, right? Can you feel that energy? When someone validates us, it is so calming to the nervous system. Suddenly, we don't feel like we have to explain what's wrong. We feel understood. We feel seen. We feel like someone gets it. And when we do this for ourselves, it calms our nervous system. It's one of the most powerful things we can do for ourselves. So I hope that this feels helpful to you. I hope that you've gained something from this video. If this feels helpful to you and you want to hear more from me, you can check out these videos here. And in the meantime, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.